Before I start today's stories, I just want to give a reminder that if you want your very own scary stories to be read on this channel, make sure to send them to my email down in the description below. As always, enjoy these scary true stories. "Hey," a gruff voice said. "Hey kid," someone poked my shoulder roughly. I opened my eyes. There was a man sitting next to me. Unkempt beard, rancid breath, and unwashed clothes. Homeless? Probably. "I don't have any change," I said. He wasn't the first homeless person I'd seen on the subway, but he was the first to sit so close to me. Probably high, I thought. I looked around the car. The man and I were the only ones inside. Not surprising, it was pretty late at night. The man chuckled. His teeth were brown. "I don't want change." "Then what? I got a question," he said. "Look, pal, I've had a long day, so I think I'll pass." "You sure?" He sounded like I'd just turned down the last donut in the box. "I'm sure," I said. To make my point clearer, I put my earphones in. Not bothering to play any music, I leaned my head back and shut my eyes again. The train stopped at 2 more stations. I didn't open my eyes, but I didn't hear anyone get in the car, and I could still feel the homeless man sitting next to me. One more stop and I'd be home. "Hey," the homeless man said. I ignored him. "Hey," he said again. I sighed and pulled out one of my earphones. When I opened my eyes, I saw that he was still sitting next to me, but I almost jumped out of my skin when I saw 2 other people were in the car. A woman in her late 30s and a little girl with pigtails were sitting across from me. The woman, who I assumed was the girl's mother, was reading a magazine with bored disinterest. The little girl was sucking on a sucker, cherry-flavored, judging by the red smear around her mouth. Her blue eyes were fixed on me. I hadn't heard the 2 come into the car. Weird, I thought. Must have dozed off and missed it. "Hey," the homeless man said, drawing my attention away from the little girl's eyes. "What?" I said. "You want to hear my question?" "No," I said. "Would you leave me be?" "Suit yourself," he shrugged. I scowled. The guy was really starting to annoy me. I made a show of putting my earphones back in and starting my music, just loud enough to drown the guy out. The little girl was still staring at me intently. We came to another stop. I started to drift off. Then, about 10 minutes later, I felt someone shove my shoulder. My annoyance was brimming over into anger, and I sat up to tell the guy off. There were 4 more people in the train. I hadn't heard them get on the train either, but I'd had my music blasting pretty loud. Still, something didn't feel right. The little girl was still staring at me. Her cherry sucker and red-smeared lips twitched slightly. Her blue eyes had a strange depth. It seemed if I stared too long, I might forget to breathe. It was a ridiculous thought. I knew this and I scoffed at the idea. But there was a little voice in the back of my head, a worm of doubt. The homeless man waved his gloved hand in front of my face. I actually did jump and tore my eyes from the little girl. "What?" I snapped. "Do you want to hear my question now?" "Fine," I said. "What? What is your question?" The man bared his rotten teeth in a grin and leaned in and said in a conspirator's whisper, "Do you believe in monsters?" "Do I what?" I said. "No, of course I don't." "Are you high?" The man chuckled. "Oh ho, a skeptic!" His breath really was terrible. "Look, I'm really not in the mood to talk, so you don't believe in monsters?" The man cut me off. "What about ghosts? Ghouls, angels, demons, God?" He lowered his voice. "The devil? Do you have a point?" I asked. I wasn't about to talk about my spirituality or lack thereof to a hobo who was, in all probability, tripping angel dust. "The thing about monsters," he said, ignoring me, "is that they're nearly perfect hunters. I mean, ghosts are stuck to one place. Ghouls hunt alone. Monsters, though, they're like wolves. They have a hierarchy, they're organized. But do you know what makes them most dangerous?" Before I could answer, he continued. "They hunt in packs. They set up traps. Their prey seldom know what's happening until it's too late. But they don't kill their prey straight off. Oh no, that'd be too easy. They toy with them first, get their scent. Monsters love the chase, see?" "Where are you going with this?" I said. I wanted to sound angry, but the guy was starting to creep me out. "I just want to ask you one more question," he said. He nodded to the rest of the train. "How did these people get here?" The train was packed. Every seat was taken. Men and women of all ages filled the space. and each one of them was staring at me. The little girl with the pigtails and the red-smeared lips still had her blue eyes fixed on me. The sucker she held in her mouth made her cheek bulge on one side. The train was slowing down, arriving at my stop. How? The word left my lips in a breath. The train came to a stop, and the doors slid open. I felt the need to run, to push through the staring strangers and sprint home. Instead, I stood and calmly made my way to the door. As I walked past the little girl with the pigtails and red-smeared lips, she pulled out her sucker and smiled at me. The sucker was blue. I wanted to smile back, but instead pushed through to the exit. I stepped out into the night air and sighed in relief as I watched the doors to the train slide shut. I watched as the train slid away on the tracks, eventually swallowed by the darkness of the night. I turned and walked home. The whole way, I thought about the train ride. How did those people get on the train? Who was the homeless man? And the little girl? Had I imagined it, or did her teeth seem a little too pointed? I was ready to shake it all off. I was ready for my bed. I took the elevator up to my floor and tiredly made my way down the hall to my apartment. Once the door was in sight, I noticed something strange. There was a piece of paper tacked to the wood of the door, a note scrawled in messy handwriting with only 3 words written. "I've got your scent." I take the subway to work. I have to go into my office 3 or 4 times a week, and I always take the subway. It's a pretty uneventful ride, but over the past month or so, I have been getting more and more suspicious, and now I know I was right. Let me explain the subway system in my city to you, because it's not very good. There's only one subway line, and it runs in a straight line underneath Main Street, from the university at the edge of the city to the middle of downtown and back. It's not a very popular mode of transportation because you have to be traveling along a pretty specific path for it to be useful. But I am lucky enough to both live near the line and work on Main Street downtown. The first half of the line is underground, and you have to pay for a ticket to ride. Although there aren't turnstiles like in a big city, they just send through metro workers at random times to physically check that everyone on the train has a ticket. Then the second half of the line is above ground downtown. It's free to ride when you're above ground, but if you go underground at all, you're supposed to buy a ticket. About a month ago, they shut down one of the subway stops. They put some signs up saying it would be temporarily closed until further notice after a certain date. It's pretty noteworthy because there's only like 10 stops on the line. I thought it was kind of weird that they were going to close down an entire stop, but I figured it was for construction, although the signs didn't say why it was closing. I didn't think too much of it. It's not my stop or anything. I had only even been inside that station a few times. The first couple of times I took the subway after Medical Campus Station closed, I thought it was kind of eerie. The train rushed right through the station without slowing down. I know that's a thing that happens in other cities because not all lines stop at every station, but we don't have that here. It stops at every station, every time. Also, it was so empty. I know it shouldn't have come as shock to me since it's closed, but it just looked weird. I didn't get a good look anyway since the train went by so quickly. After a couple times passing through it, I stopped noticing, only taking vague note of the conductor announcing that you should get off at the adjacent stop and take a shuttle if you needed to get to that area of the city. Just an empty subway station. Not weird, but after a few weeks, it started to feel weird again. It was just so empty. It was always lit up and exactly the same and empty. There was no construction going on. That was weird to me for sure. I thought if they had to do some construction, they'd want to get it over with quickly and get the station open again. It was really inconvenient for some people that it was closed down, but they hadn't even started yet. I started becoming very aware of the station rushing by every time I took the subway. Each day that I still saw no construction or anything made me feel more uneasy about it. I decided to break in. I know it sounds kind of radical, but breaking into places is kind of my thing. I used to be pretty serious into urban exploration, so an active site like this isn't exactly my normal MO, but I was really curious, and I figured it could be a fun challenge. The easiest way to get into Medical Campus Station would be to follow the tracks from the outdoor section of the subway. They don't close them off or anything, so I could just walk into the gently sloping hole. Medical Campus is the last stop before the train goes above ground, so it would have been easy to follow the tracks to it. I decided not to risk going that way. Even though I was planning on going after the subway shut down for the night, I have no real way of knowing if they ever bring the trains through after hours for maintenance or whatever. Plus, I'd probably be more likely to run into night workers in the tunnels. I decided to go directly into the station. On my way over, I started to consider that maybe they were doing all their construction at night, and that's why I never saw anybody there. It still didn't make a lot of sense to me. Why would they move all their equipment away every day? And why wasn't I seeing any changes to the architecture then? I got to the station, and it was dark and quiet. I went around to a back entrance where I couldn't be seen from the street and took out my lockpicks. Good practice. It took me a few minutes, but I quietly cracked open the door and entered. It was very dark. I was a little surprised. Every time I had passed by this station in the train, the lights had been on, including the one time I took the train home from a baseball game late at night, right before close. But I guess they must turn the lights out after business hours. That's not weird. I took out a flashlight and headed towards the stairs leading down to the platform. Navigating an active building, even in the dark, is much easier than the abandoned places I was used to. I didn't feel like I had to worry much about where I was stepping, and I had no fear that the foundation was going to crumble under me. It didn't have that abandoned building smell either. Abandoned buildings all have this very similar smell of swirling dust and dampness and stale air. I'm actually very fond of that smell, but the station smelled like, I wasn't sure. It was a good smell, like a good food smell, but there were no food vendors in our small subway. I'm not too good with smells anyway. My flashlight beam lit up the air directly ahead of me, and I could see some dust motes. I was approaching the top of the stairs when I felt myself step on something squishy. I jumped back a little and pointed my light down at it. It looked like a patch of moss on the middle of the tile floor. That was weird. It was always so clean in here. I guess it had been closed for a month. I felt like the food smell was stronger now. Like baked goods. I leaned over a little and prodded the moss with my sneaker while I was shining the light on it. Yellow-colored dust motes came out of it, and I could see them in my flashlight beam. The smell was strong now, and I could tell it smelled like cinnamon. That was really weird. I started to feel uneasy and took off my bandana from around my hair and wrapped it around my mouth. I should have brought my respirator, but I didn't think I'd need it at an active site. As I proceeded towards the stairs, I watched the ground directly in front of me with my flashlight. There were a couple more patches of that moss-like stuff. I didn't step on them. When I got to the top of the stairs, I shined the light down and saw a bunch more of it on the stairs. The one I looked at up close was kind of a dark green color, but the patches on the stairs looked black. Maybe it was just the lighting. I went about halfway down the stairs, but there was more and more of that moss stuff, and I didn't want to go down any farther. It made me feel really uneasy, and I didn't want to touch any more of it. But from halfway down the stairs, I should be able to see the platform. I waved my flashlight over it, and my stomach churned. That moss stuff was everywhere on the lower platform, almost covering the floors and climbing up the walls and over the benches. More of those dust motes were in my light beam down there too. Dust motes are spores. I tried to look at the tracks, but I couldn't see them. I should have been able to see them from where I was standing, but it looked like there was a wall or something blocking them. I pulled my bandana tighter over my mouth and stood still in a kind of panic for a second. Then I turned and left as fast as I could without accidentally trampling over a bunch of moss. I ran around the corner to the door and locked it on my way out. Guys, I'm freaked out. None of this makes any sense. Why wasn't I able to see any of this from the train? What was blocking me from seeing the tracks? Most importantly, what is that stuff? It looked like moss or mold but I know mold, and it didn't smell like mold. It smelled like cinnamon. I'm so confused. What is happening to Medical Campus Station? That was 2 nights ago. I haven't been back on the subway since then. I've been working from home because commuting to the office freaks me out too much. And I've been feeling kind of under the weather. I'm worried. What do I do?